So this Kubota ZD1211 zero-turn mower, it's a diesel. It was brought to me because several other mechanics have failed with it. Either I'm the lowest tier on the line or the last hope, or maybe people figure by the time they reach me they have nothing to lose and I can't mess it up any more than it already is. I don't know. This is relatively new. It's only a couple years old, but it's out of warranty. The owner got it. It overheats after about an hour or so of use. It always has done it since brand new. He never took it back during warranty because they pushed him off several times. This is a rear discharge mower deck. And they were saying you got to keep your filters clean and everything because it's shooting the stuff up under the engine and a couple things like that. Basically, they kept brushing him off until the warranty period expired, and here we are. So several mechanics have been in this thing. I think it's cracked the head twice. First time they repaired it. The second time, I don't know if they put a new head on it or something. Anyway, this thing's been through a rough life. I think they flushed the cooling system. They got whatever casting sand. They said they found maybe a little bit of casting sand in it when it was done the first time. You know, water pumps, radiators, all that stuff has been checked, flushed, everything, and well, I guess a couple mechanics gave up on it. It's still doing it. Same problem, same symptoms, hasn't changed a bit. Main problem with this is the warning sirens only go off when it's practically too late, when it's like almost at 300 degrees, and by that point your engine's pretty much toast. Anyway, that's what the problem is. Let's take a look at it. Oh, coffee, that's important. I got so much equipment here in my yard, and I got to get rid of some of it. Everything needs work, and very little of it is mine. Still got to fix my winch on my trailer hiding over there in the background. All right, let's see what we got here. Let's climb aboard. All right. Well, it's too early in the morning to get my rear wet, but it'll be fine. All right. So they did add a gauge with a needle on it. Got our control center here. Where's the key? I just want to take a look at the gauges here. Here, we'll power up. 393 hours, almost 400 hours. Got a volt gauge, fuel, yeah, so here's the temperature. No numbers, just a bar graph. Oh, that's all the exploring there. For a diesel mower like this, that's very low hours. Alright, just hit that tab. Alright, where are we at here? Oh, it's a cute little diesel engine. So here's the fuel pump. Still practically brand new, barely even dirty. Fuel shut-off solenoid. It's a cute little inline pump. Not much to it. I guess this is our coolant tank. I hope it doesn't take a special coolant because I don't. Oh, she's full right up to the brim. So I was told that when it gets that hot, the coolant obviously boils over. So that's probably why they have it overfilled. I would probably do that too. Err on the side of caution. They have a lot of property that they mow with this, and when it was overheating, they were a little far from the shop, so it wasn't just a, you know, pull it back to the shop kind of thing. So I'm hearing pressure release, so that means the pressure, the cooling system was being pressurized and staying pressurized. It held that pressure for that time. Yep, she comes off easy now. So that tells me right off the bat the pump, which we're pretty sure the pump worked anyway because it's been worked on. The pump is building pressure, which means it's probably distributing coolant through the system. So there's another option here, and that is timing. Part of what I'm looking at is how hard it would be to adjust the timing. So it looks like it's set by gears. It's not going to be easy to check. Yeah, that whole cover basically has to come off the front of the engine to adjust the timing. Now, I'm a little skeptical about it possibly being the timing, because you'd probably notice that in the way it runs. In theory, you could probably get it to run if it's like a gear drive, if it's like a tooth off or something, but you'd probably notice it on running and starting, and I doubt, I'll take a look, but I doubt they would let it leave the factory like that. I think the first step here is going to be, we're going to evaluate it without doing anything else to it. We're going to see what data we can pick up. Mainly, the first thing I want to see is exhaust gas temperatures relative to, I'm sure I can find some data on what is normal for this engine. What is this and why is it? Oh, is this our new temperature, aftermarket temperature gauge? It's right up against the muffler. Why didn't they put an elbow on that? That seems like a bad install. Whoever did that, shame on you. Mechanical throttle lever with the cable. Nothing digital there, that's good. That's what I like to see. So that is my initial assessment. Next stage, as we start looking at things. We're looking at like 170 coming out of there. 195. 164 in the middle. This one is extremely elevated compared to the others. Let's see what happens when we kick the throttle up. So now to kick back down to idle, temps came back down when I kicked her down to idle. That's to be expected. Intake air at about 100-ish. Radiator, where's it going in? Going in at about 135 and coming out at, where's our, coming out at 101. It's working pretty good. Actually got a puff of smoke there. We're about 150-ish. Okay, so this injector isn't even tight. This is the cylinder that was running a little cooler than the rest. That's not a good sign. Also, the line snapped off relatively easily, and I don't know if that was because it was weakened by something, or it doesn't look too dirty, but we will see. Definitely gonna have to fix that. Yeah, I feel like it was already weakened, or somebody tried to repair it and covered it up. I'm not sure. So I've been all over this thing doing my preliminary assessment, and I have not found a whole lot. I've mostly been verifying functionality of various parts, and I'll just run through that a little bit for you quick. Basically loosened each injector to make sure the engine changed pitch. Every cylinder is firing. All the injectors seem to work. They're not overly carboned up. That's what I'd expect for a couple 100 hours on a little engine like this. Timing still could be off, but again, I find it hard to believe that it runs as well as it does if the timing is off a tooth without smoking or anything. So I'm going to put the timing on the back burner for now because it involves ripping that cover off, which is a little bit more in depth and harder to get to. So I'm not going to do that right away. I'm going to verify cooling system efficiency. I pressure tested it and did a bleed down. So basically I pressurized it to this spec, 0.9 bar. And then I let it sit. And over the course of an hour, it just moved barely a needle's width. So we're not having, I don't think we have any leaks or anything in the system. But if this radiator isn't pressurizing properly, it won't properly, you know, force coolant through the system and everything. You need that pressure that it builds up to help the pump. Anyway, let's hook up our tester and see where we're at with the engine running. So if you're not familiar with testing radiators, this is a quick way to verify cooling system integrity. You put this cap, which is basically just a sealing cap that seals up to this point down here on the radiator, and there's various attachments. This is just a quick connect. Then you can pressurize the system with this hand pump. So 0.9 bar is right about there. As you can see, it doesn't leak down. So what I'm going to do here is, oh, I don't want that pressure. I'm going to start the engine and see what kind of pressure the pump makes. Now you got to be careful not to over pressurize it here. If you see the needle shoot up because exhaust gases are getting into the coolant or something, then you want to shut it down right away. If you over pressurize it, you can blow lines and radiators and things like that. So just running, she's running about 10 psi. Oh, it's gone up a little bit. Anyway, it's not over pressurizing quickly. Tells our coolant temperature relative to like what you would measure on the hose. 138 there. Yeah, it's close actually. Okay, we're going to do a combustion gas test. If you're doing that, it's different for diesel than gas. In this case, we're using fluid made for diesel. I'm going to fill this up to the line. Where's the line? There's the line. Fluid will change to red, from red to orange yellow in color. Let's see what happens. It says to do it for a minute, and we did it for a little bit longer than that. Nothing. Well, no significant color change. It's had a lot of gases run through it. So I'm going to do a proof of concept on this and make sure this actually works. So I'm going to test it right from the exhaust pipe just to make sure. It did turn yellow. It does work on diesel engines with the diesel fluid. Well, there we go. I guess that means our cooling system is completely 100% intact. The cooling fan, it does suck air in. I tested it with a piece of paper and pushes it out the other side. Very nice. The shroud is intact. We're getting lots of airflow, so that's not an issue. We know the block and everything is clean because when they had it stripped down, they did make sure to rot it out real good, and they did get some original casting sand out of it, so I'm told. When they did that, we know the block's clean. We know the radiator's clean because they knew overheating was a problem, so they cleaned and flushed everything. I can't find anything like wrong with it. Like the belt is tight to run the fan, and we know the fan's spinning, and it's spinning the right way. And even if you put the fan on backwards, the blades would still be roughly pointed the right way. The curve would be a little different. We don't know how well coolant's actually flowing. Now, I just lifted the housing off, and I don't know what that is. What is that? It's a piece of metal. How did they get a piece of metal inside the thermostat? Alright, well, that could have kept it from opening. You know, in theory. Anyway, we're going to test this thermostat. Alright, we're going to do the boil test on this thermostat. Got my meat thermometer in there. This is set for 82 degrees. That's stamped on it. Oh, don't put your string on the burner, you'll catch it on fire now. We're at 50 Celsius, which is about 125 roughly Fahrenheit. Sometimes I do this with a heat gun to see if it's going to work or not, but in this case, since this thing is so suspect, I wanted to see if it had a gradual opening or if it was going to open at all. With a heat gun I can't gauge the temperature, but if I put it on the stove with a thermometer, so we're almost to 80 degrees Celsius. That's about 82 right there, and it hasn't budged. We're almost to 90. I feel like the center section has gone down, but it hasn't actually opened the thermostat itself. I don't know. There's 90. Pulled out of the water. Let's see. Okay, well, it is open. Alright, I guess we should probably try to find out where that piece of metal came from, so let's pull the water pump. Well, I don't think that piece of metal came from our water pump. This looks pretty good. I don't see any pitting from cavitation either. Looking down there, and all the seals and springs and seats look okay. Way down in there, it's hard to see, but you can kind of feel it. Okay, I have the water pump back on, and I just want to do a quick pumping test. I'm going to spin it by hand and see if we get water building up towards here. I've got it filled up to about where the bottom of the thermostat would be. Well, not quite, but... So we're looking for a water level rise. If I give it a good spin, it does rise up a little bit. So it is moving water. That doesn't tell us volume or anything, but it does tell us that it should be moving water. Alright, we are going to check the timing on this thing. There's no easy access ports or anything to my knowledge, so check the gear alignments in the front and everything. We got to pull that front engine cover off. So we're going to pull the hood off for easy access, and we're going to pull the air cleaner assembly off, and then we're going to start digging down into this. We got to drain the coolant system because we got to pull the water pump and everything else. So let's start pulling this apart. The air cleaner assembly is removed, and the upper radiator line was removed. So now we can get to this stuff and get to the next steps. So you can kind of see the cover we need to get to is this cover right here, because we need to see the timing gears and everything. So we need to pull, you know, the fan, the pump, all of this stuff off the front, unfortunately, because it's all one cover. So I'm gonna pull the alternator and set that aside. Probably not even going to disconnect it, just let it hang there. And then I'm going to pull the water pump, and at the same time I'm going to pull this shroud and lift them out all at once. It's just easier that way. So now with the alternator pulled and set aside here, I can pull these 4 shroud bolts, one in each corner. This one down there is a little hidden. It's where is it? It's down here under the coolant tank. Fun to access. We'll pull this radiator hose so we can get in there. We'll pull those 4 bolts to loosen the shroud up, and then we'll pull the water pump bolts, and we'll just lift that out as one assembly. Alright, I have the bolts out. Let's lift this assembly up out of here. Don't forget, you gotta pull this overflow hose off and through. Now we can get to the front assembly here. We're going to have to pull this drive shaft yoke off. So that's just these 3 bolts here, and slide that on the yoke, because we're going to have to pull this pulley off the front to get this cover off. So we got to take the big bolt out of the end of the crankshaft. Then it's pretty much just cover bolts from there. So let's get that bolt out. The bolt and the pulley are off. Remember that this is a weighted pulley, so you have to get it back on right. You'll see there is a, it's on the outside, you'll see there's a mark. It needs to be aligned with the corresponding mark on the crankshaft when you put it back together, because of this weight here. If you don't do that, your engine will be out of balance, probably run rough. Okay, now we can pull all the bolts around here. With the timing cover off, you can see the gears, and you can see that there are marks. Here's a pin, or here's a mark, there's a mark. This one has 3, and there's 3 there. And there should be 2 here and 2 here. So as you can see, I've marked the timing marks with a paint marker. Now the tooth count on these gears is such that, if I remember properly, they only all align like every 138 revolutions or something like that. I'm probably totally wrong on the number of revolutions, but anyway, I'm going to turn it over until I get at least one set to align, and well, if one set aligns, they all should, I guess, but let's take a look. Alright, after much spinning, which basically I just took the glow plugs out and spun it over with a bar because the starter goes too fast to tell. I did try bumping it over with the starter, but it's just, it goes too far. You can't just bump at it, just, you know, goes too far on a bump. Anyway, after much turning, I have them all aligned. So this bottom, the crankshaft gear, there's a dot on either side because there's not room to put 2 dots, but it's the 2 dots here, the 1 dot here, and the 3 dots there. This is the Kubota ZD1211 E4 engine. Your dot quantities on different gears are going to be different for different engines, so just be careful on that. I mean, if you absolutely need to get them aligned, you can pop the snap ring off this intermediate gear, pull it out, rotate the gear to the correct location and put it in. But I would need it to see if they were aligned without modifying anything, because I'm checking and verifying, and I want to see where it's at. I'm not setting. So this is its base setting, and if you go over here, top dead center, the top dead center mark is going to be perfectly perpendicular to the engine plane, basically, the mark on the flywheel. So that all aligns. So we've verified the gear timing. Now we need to check what the pump timing is. Now we've verified our base settings. We have something to go on for the pump itself. I don't know if the pump has ever been removed from this engine. I would hope it would have been when they rebuilt it, just to clean things and make sure everything stayed clean, but I don't know, basically. So we're going to do a very rudimentary spill test. We're going to take out the delivery valve and the number 1 injector circuit, and this is a piston style injector pump. As the piston comes up, it takes a gulp of fuel, and then it seals the intake ports on the piston, and it pushes that fuel up into the circuit. So when that circuit is open with no delivery valve, fuel can pass completely through that. The delivery valve basically keeps fuel from backflowing. So we're going to take that delivery valve out, and we're going to see when that piston comes up, we're going to see where that fuel port closes and fuel stops flowing. So that's the goal of this spill test, and then we can check our timing marks on the flywheel. Conveniently, we have access to that. But so let's take the delivery valve out, and we'll take the glow plugs out so we can turn the engine over easier to get fine control over that. So let's take a look. Okay, delivery valve is out. I have the line unhooked. The proper way to do this is to make a drain into a container with another line, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stand back. And so right now, with the engine at top dead center, we should get fuel out of that when we pressurize the system with no delivery valve. So let's turn this electric fuel pump on. Yep, indeed. Okay, so basically we're going to turn that on, and we're going to rotate it until the fuel stops. I'm going to be rotating the flywheel down here, and yeah. So we got fuel. We're going to rotate. Not stopping. I'm not stopping. Wow. It doesn't actually stop. Why is the piston being held open? I wonder. Okay, so the most I can get out of this, it's pushing past the piston, which is not a good thing. The most I'm getting out of this is a reduction in flow when that piston should be sealed, and that's not good. It should be completely sealed off when the piston is pumping. I'm getting that reduction in flow from about 20, it starts at about 20 degrees top dead center, which leads me to believe that that's when the injection pulse should start. So that part would be right, but it should not be leaking this much. So if the piston isn't sealing properly, you won't get a full injection pulse, but you also, I mean, if that electric pump could overcome the delivery valve, then we could be getting extra fuel. I guess I need to put the delivery valve in and check that out. Alright, so I put the delivery valve back in, and right now we are at the start of the injection pulse, so the pump should be coming up to close off the fuel port. And we're talking about the pump overpowering the delivery valve, and I think it is, because if I turn this fuel pump on, watch the fuel in there, you can see it is pumping out just a hair of fuel, which means it is at the very least lifting that delivery valve just a hair. So it didn't quite go as expected, because the fuel should shut off when that piston comes up. So at some point in the range of the engine, in that 10, 20, 30 degree range, at some point the piston should be completely shut off regardless of anything else that's going on, and there shouldn't be any fuel that's able to get past it. So I'm wondering if the tolerances in this pump are worn, and that could be an issue, because even a little fuel issue could throw it off. Anyway, that is a just very, 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 very quick way to check that. But the customer opted to replace the pump and injectors, but the cost to rebuild the old pump was actually more expensive than it would be for a new pump. So let's show what it's supposed to look like when the delivery valve actually works. Alright, so let's fire up the pump. As you can see, we get no leakage from any of these delivery valves. Now you might ask why I'm doing the spill timing with a new pump. Well, I want to verify that the new pump is the same as the old pump, and I don't have to change the shims to adjust the timing. Okay, got the delivery valve out. Let's turn on our fuel pressure. You should see fuel coming out of there. Okay, so we got fuel coming out of here, so it should shut off. Yep, so there it starts to shut off. Right about there, it's completely, right about a 20, top dead center. Completely shut off. And there it starts going again. Alright, so that's what a spill test is supposed to look like. I mean, ordinarily you would spill it into an approved container, but that's what it should look like, so this is working. Alright, this is injector number 1. So I'm gonna pump it up. Oh goodness, it pops off right away. Look at that. Oh, the spray pattern's awful too, and it just bleeds right down. It should have a solid close because this has a delivery valve in it. So when the pressure comes off here, the delivery valve should snap closed and relieve that pressure enough that it should, well anyway, goodness, the spray pattern's off. It's just, wow. Just bleeds all the way down. Okay. Alright. Let's try numero 20. Okay. Injector number 2. Okay, we're seeing a good pump up. It's 1500. Right about at 1900 is where it pops, and I believe that's right about where it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be 18 something. Good enough. Number 3. Let's see if we get the same result here. Yep, we're shooting up. Yep, pop off at about 18 to 1900. So, and good spray pattern, just like the last one. So, all right. Part of the reason it's not holding pressure is because of my really, really cheap tester here. It's got some leaks. This is, I believe it's like something, I don't know, it's like an ABN brand or something. They're not a real brand name. It's a cheap knockoff. Don't buy these. This came broken in 2 different ways. The gauge was broken and the stop was broken. The pressure shut off. Don't buy one of these. Buy a good one. Don't waste your money. Okay, so injector number 1 is toast, but the others seem to be okay. Okay, where are we at with this thing? So we stripped down the cooling system, found a piece of metal in the thermostat. The thermostat opens a little late, and then it opened all at once instead of gradually, which is not a good thing, but it did open. We put in a lower thermostat. I think it was rated at about 71 degrees Celsius. Not sure what that translates to in Fahrenheit. I'll put it up on the screen when I do the math. And we know that thermostat works because we tested it. So we found the injection pump number 1 circuit had issues. The plunger, the delivery valve, and the injector all had issues. So those things could have all contributed in small effect to our problem. Again, this wasn't a huge problem, it was a slow heat build over time. Those things could have contributed. What doesn't jive with my data is the temperature data was coolest on this cylinder, maybe slightly warmer than the middle on this one, and pretty hot on this relative to these two. So I don't know. All injectors have been replaced. The pump's new. So, and lines have been cleaned and everything. So we're basically starting with a fresh fuel system there. So I guess now we just have to test it and see what happens. So the testing went good. I would like to say that I just swapped out the pump and the injectors and everything worked fine. Well, that's not what happened. So as you can see here, the original pump is back on. We've got 2 old injectors and then 1 new injector. Probably can't see it, but just take my word for it. Anyway, what happened was I put the new pump on and I couldn't get it. It was hard starting, and once I did get it to start, it just lugged along and it would not throttle up. When I took the throttle plate off the side and reached a screwdriver in and manually moved the rack, it would throttle up, but otherwise you wouldn't get enough fuel to actually throttle up on its own. At least I assume that's what's going on, but I didn't dig into it because it was a new pump under warranty, and so I sent that pump back. So I put the old pump in and thought, let's test the injectors. So I put the injectors in and it just smoked like a Victorian manufacturing complex. I thought, well, okay, we kind of struck out on everything here. So I went back to the original injector and I pulled it apart, and there was nothing wrong with it that was fixable cheaply. I believe that the spring was either collapsed or weak or not tempered properly or something, and it may have been that way from the factory. So I figured, well, we'll just put 1 injector in, and if that one overfuels a little bit, well, we'll just deal with that. So as far as the pump goes, I took the pump out and I cleaned it as well as I could. Didn't think it was going to work. Flushed it, kind of Scotch-Brighted the delivery valve seat a little bit just to, kind of remove any, maybe just tiny imperfections that were in there. And the delivery valve seemed to start sealing. The plunger, I'm sure the plunger still leaks a little bit, but at least the delivery valve will put that back pressure on so that the extra fuel can't, or at least it's more difficult for extra fuel to get into the line. And of course it's not injecting fuel all the time because the injector actually works. It's actually returning and closing properly. So I tested it, as you saw, and it worked. And by worked, I mean it did not overheat. It actually didn't smoke. It ran surprisingly well. I mean, it ran really, really good. With the 160-degree thermostat, we never got up over about 195 on the gauge, except when the radiator started to plug up, as these rear discharge mowers tend to do quicker, because it's chucking all that dust and stuff right up under the radiator and fan to suck it in. So the radiator plugged up about 50%. It was getting up to about 210, 220 ish. It was starting to approach that. That was making me nervous, because that was, you know, that's pretty hot. It was getting up to 3 bars on the gauge. That's about what I judged to be too much when I originally started testing this mower. Two bars ish on this gauge is pretty good. That's all you really want. So, I mean, that's what I really want. I don't know what the factory wants, but the factory wants a 195-degree thermostat. So it ran really good. And then, of course, I cleaned the radiator, and the temperature went back down again. I mowed for about, I think, total about 3 hours. I did a couple 45-minute shots here on my place with the grass. I mean, you saw it. It was really high, to the point where the engine was starting to bog down, and I'd have to back it off. And it didn't get hot doing that. And then I took it to another lot and mowed for a couple hours, just straight, just solid, right on through, except for cleaning the radiator. And, you know, again, tall grass, and it did fantastic. I mean, the grass was tall enough. I probably should have brush hogged it first. That's how tall it was. You know, a little bit more than you'd think for a 30 horsepower mower, but this thing did fantastic. So I would judge that we found and fixed the problem, and surprisingly cheaply too, because we sent that pump back. It was under warranty, and I went to send the injectors back, and they said, well, just keep them. So they didn't want them back. So we're running that one new injector. I don't know what I'm going to do with the other two that inject a little too much fuel for this engine, but I'll keep them as spares probably. Risk injecting a little fuel, but anyway. So I would deem this fixed. And I want to note, I think I noted in the beginning, but I want to note that several mechanics had this mower over the last couple of years after the warranty expired. Not specialized Kubota dealer mechanics, but regular diesel mechanics. And several people looked at it and cannot find the problem. Now granted, one of those mechanics was rebuilding the engine because it had run too hot and overheated. So I don't know why he didn't go back and look at the root cause of the overheating. He rebuilt the engine and I guess just ran it at, you know, just sitting there static for a long time, and it didn't overheat. But I did that too, and it didn't overheat. It was only when I took it out and worked it and ran the PTO and everything all at once. And my suspicion that the root cause of this problem was the number one cylinder wasn't getting enough fuel, and it was overworking the other two and putting too much load on the engine. Obviously, I have no way to verify this other than like my temperature data and stuff, but I feel like that one cylinder, number one, wasn't holding up its end of the work. And on a 3-cylinder engine like this, when you take out, you know, 1/3 of the power available, police are coming. When you take out 1/3 of the power available, it's gonna work the others really hard and probably make them, you know, maybe overheat, I guess. That is my working assumption of the root cause. There's no real way to verify it other than the fact that that's what we did and it fixed the problem. So I haven't seen a lot of videos online about actually people fixing overheating problems with these D1105 other than the bare basics, like the cooling system malfunctioned or something. I couldn't actually find much, but I did find a lot of instances of these overheating. But people don't seem to go back and post the actual cause. So I wanted to do this whole video here, and especially to show what it wasn't for sure, because I did everything that I could think of on an elimination factor. You know, the cooling system and the timing and all that. I wanted to eliminate all of those things to dig down into the root cause for this customer, so that we were fairly certain what it was, especially before we spent money on it. But in the end, most of the money we spent was labor. There were a few little parts, like to fix the temperature gauge that they had run up against the muffler. They just ran it straight through here, and it was too close to the muffler. So I put in this, I had to put in the elbow, but then I had to put in the extension because the temperature probe is pretty deep. So you need to extend it up so you can actually fit the probe into the elbow. So, you know, like I had to buy this fitting, and, you know, we put in a lower thermostat and, you know, all that stuff. So after all that running, the coolant is still, you know, okay. It didn't overheat and bubble out. Yeah. So I especially wanted to post this video, and I know it's long and involved, but I also know that other people have overheating problems with these D1105 engines, or specifically these zero-turn mowers. And like I said, nobody has dug down into the root cause and actually showed what the fix was. So hopefully this will help some people out. I mean, that is why I do videos. So yeah, I would call this fixed. So I'm gonna call this one done. Like I said, I wanted to post this because I hope it'll help somebody out. If you like this, we do lots of in-depth things like this on the channel. So if you liked it, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and as always, thanks for watching.